Hey there, amazing friends. I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great content. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. Eerie echoes by the Black Shore. Ghost ship whispers that haunt coastal fisherfolk night after night. Along the rugged coastline of a little-known maritime region, there is a stretch of bleak, dark sands that locals uneasily call the Black Shore. Battered by unforgiving waves and shadowed by towering cliffs, this remote belt of coast has for centuries been a place of paradox, both a vital lifeline for hardy fisherfolk and a haunting zone that fosters countless eerie legends. By day, the rough waters crash endlessly, gulls shriek overhead, and small boats brave the chop to harvest the ocean's bounty. But it is at night, under the pale gleam of moonlight or the weight of a pitch-black sky, that the shore's hidden nature emerges. In these solitary hours, the swirling tides become a backdrop for strange echoes that drift along the breeze. Echoes the fisherfolk insist are whispers from a ghost ship rumored to sail across the horizon for no mortal reason. The phenomenon is neither new nor fleeting in night after night. For as long as anyone can recall, disquieting calls or murmurs have manifested across these dark waters, leaving those who live near the Black Shore convinced that something from beyond the grave roams the waves. Many times, visitors dismiss the stories as fishermen's superstition or illusions conjured by the wind. Yet the accounts from lifelong coastal dwellers remain consistent, weaving a tapestry of half-choked sightings, inexplicable lights in the distance, and an abiding fear that somewhere just off the shore, a phantom vessel sails a route that leads nowhere. The local community, known simply as Westgrave Village, has only a modest population. Tucked between the craggy cliffs and dense pine forests inland, it sits about a quarter-mile from the waterline, its cottages lined with weather-worn planks that stand as a testament to brutal storms. Its people are stoic, forging their livelihood from fishing or small-scale trade, and seldom venturing far unless forced by necessity. For them, the sea has always been both provider and threat. Numerous memorial plaques and simple wooden crosses near the slope to the beach mark the names of those lost to storms, riptides, or mysterious vanishings. In Westgrave's only pub, the Storm Lantern, battered fishermen gather nightly to share stories of the day's catch, the unpredictable currents, and sometimes, after enough drinks, the unstoppable specter of the ghost ship rumored to appear offshore. The earliest mention of this phantom vessel surfaces in an old local chronicle from around 3 centuries ago. An itinerant monk traveling through the region wrote about strange midnight calls and an unholy bark glimpsed under the moon, though he never saw it personally. Over the decades, diaries of local families mention weird shapes on the horizon at night, faint lights that bobbed in an unnatural pattern, and disembodied moans drifting on the winds. By the mid-19th century, rumors coalesced into a near-constant tradition, with sea-tough men claiming to have glimpsed a tall masted silhouette gliding silently through the fog. They described tattered sails that glowed faintly, as if rotting or phosphorescent, and an absence of normal sound. The waves parted around the hull noiselessly. If approached, it would vanish like a mirage. Others recounted hearing the clank of chains or the anguished cry of a sea-worn crew, only to find an empty stretch of water the next instant. The phenomenon seemed to center around the Black Shore, never reported outside that narrow band of coastline. Indeed, if one traveled only a few miles east or west, the legend lost its potency, overshadowed by more standard maritime talk. Yet the superstitious hush around the ghost ship never truly died. Fishermen started to avoid nighttime voyages in that zone. and if forced to row out in the dark, they carried small talismans, lumps of driftwood carved with protective symbols, or bits of dried seaweed said to repel malevolent spirits. The older generation whispered that the ghost ship was no normal haunting. It belonged to a cursed crew condemned for some horrific wrongdoing. Some versions speak of pirates who murdered innocents and tried to hide the bodies along the shore, only to be pulled out to sea by a vengeful tide. Others mention a merchant vessel overtaken by plague, barred from landing in any port, its crew dying at anchor, left adrift in swirling currents. Another story recounts a 17th century warship that ignored a maritime code of sanctuary, bombarding coastal refugees in an act of monstrous cruelty. According to that version, an unearthly storm then claimed the warship, forcing its wrathful spirits to wander these waters in eternal penance. The result is a continuum of narratives, all pointing to a single notion. If you hear that echoing call at midnight, it's the doomed seafarers of the ghost ship calling out for salvation. As time advanced and technology arrived, a few attempts were made to investigate the phenomenon scientifically. In the 1970s, a small team of audio researchers from a distant university set up listening stations along the shore, hoping to record the rumored midnight echoes. Their gear included high-sensitivity microphones, directional hydrophones, and wave pattern analyzers. The experiment lasted for 3 weeks. While they captured eerie audio phenomena, faint moaning or chanting like noises that defied easy classification, they found no conclusive cause. They hypothesized it might be a peculiar effect of wind resonating across the cliffs, or perhaps whale calls bouncing off the submerged canyons. Yet no local whales were known to inhabit that region, and the patterns in the recordings did not match standard winds acoustics or wave interference. The lead researcher, in a concluding statement, wrote that the phenomenon remains unexplained, though it appears to intensify under certain lunar phases, especially near the new moon or the darkest nights. Ironically, not the full moon, as so many ghost tales prefer. The team disbanded, their official paper hinting that further study was warranted but never pursued. Some locals joked that the researchers, after hearing the chilling echoes one particularly stormy evening, wanted no more part in it. In Westgrave, the phenomenon continued unabated. Night after night, particularly during transitions of the tide, fisherfolk who lingered on the beach or the rocky outcroppings sometimes described seeing a dim shape at the horizon. The shape could be quickly lost if the observer blinked or turned away. Others alleged the vision drew closer, coming within a stone's throw of the shore, its deck silent and its rigging slack, though an intangible gloom radiated from it. They said a hush overcame the usual surf noise, replaced by a subdued chanting. Then the shape would fade into the sea mist. Many of these accounts are consistent about one detail: a sense of being watched from aboard. A few overcame their fear, attempting to hail or shine a lantern at the silhouette, but found no response. Their lights simply seemed swallowed by the darkness, leaving them with a haunting emptiness. One of the more compelling personal testimonies came from a fisherman named Gavin Ross, a well-respected villager. He once recounted how, while returning from a late catch in a small motorboat, he ran across a swirl in the water that made the hair on his arms stand. It was near midnight, the sky overcast, with only a partial moon. Through the gloom, he glimpsed what looked like an ancient sailing ship, its hull battered, sails in tatters. At first, he thought it was an abandoned relic adrift. But then, after he managed to turn his boat's spotlight on it, the beam seemed to pass right through the shape. Panicked, Gavin tried to accelerate away. That's when he heard an echo, like a distant wail or a voice pronouncing words in an unknown tongue. Moments later, the shape vanished, leaving only swirling water in its wake. He reached shore trembling, convinced he had crossed paths with a spectral craft. He was a sober man, not prone to flights of fancy. The story circulated quickly, renewing local convictions that the phenomenon was real and not merely illusions or storms. Curiosity wasn't limited to the local fishermen, of course. Over the years, drifters, thrill seekers, and self-proclaimed paranormal investigators arrived, each hoping to document the ghost ship once and for all. Their attempts typically ended in frustration. Photographic forays in the pitch dark rarely captured anything beyond hazy smudges on the horizon. A small handful claimed success, producing grainy images that might show a silhouette with masts. Detractors said they were doctored, or simply pictures of logs or wave formations. Some used high-tech night vision devices or even drones, but the drones often lost signal or encountered mechanical failures near the black sands, chalked up to strong electromagnetic interference. This repeated pattern further entrenched the legend's mystique. It seemed as though advanced technology faltered whenever used to confirm the ghost ship. That ironically mirrored older superstitions in the area that the shore repelled attempts to record or contain its secrets. In attempts to find an origin story, local historians rummaged through centuries of maritime logs and shipping records. They sought a candidate for which real ship might have turned into the ghostly apparition. One widely mentioned possibility is the Crown's Mercy, a merchant vessel that allegedly sank off the coast hundreds of years ago under suspicious circumstances. The captain was rumored to have mutinied against the ship's owners, leading to a violent confrontation. The story goes that on a stormy night, the Crown's Mercy attempted to land near the Black Sands to avoid the tempest, but an unknown mishap, some say the captain's murder by the first mates, led to chaos, and the vessel foundered on hidden reefs. In the weeks that followed, bodies washed ashore, their expressions contorted in terror. Some had rope marks around their wrists, suggesting betrayal and captivity. If the Crown's Mercy indeed sank there, might its restless crew now wander in spectral form, cursed to replay their final hours? The narrative is plausible enough for local lore, but no conclusive link has been established. Another rumored candidate is a slave ship that tried to discreetly offload human cargo, but was cast away by a midnight storm. The hush around such a grim event might explain the ghostly moans. Again, records are too sparse to confirm. Another dimension of the phenomenon concerns the so-called shard stones discovered intermittently along the Black Shore. These are odd fragments of driftwood, blackened by the sea, sometimes etched with indecipherable lines or shapes reminiscent of archaic runes. Some local collectors keep them as curios, claiming that the markings shift over time. A fisherman once claimed that the lines on his shard eventually formed a shape akin to a ship's prow, though when he tried to show it to others, it had changed again. A few self-styled psychics in the area speculate these are messages left by the drowned crew, attempts at bridging the living world to share a secret about their demise. Skeptics see only random patterns formed by salt erosion. The entire matter of the shard stones is overshadowed by a sense that the Black Shore is a threshold. The fishermen, though typically pragmatic, avoid toying with these relics. They prefer letting them wash away or returning them to the sea, as if to say, we do not disturb what belongs to the drowned. Uncanny though it is, tragedies continue to occur in the region. From time to time, a boat vanishes in calm weather, or a nighttime beachcomber fails to return home. The official cause might be misadventure or riptides, yet local rumor always ties each incident to the presence of the ghost ship. For example, one young man, newly arrived from inland, decided to camp out on the Black Sands alone, determined to spot the phantom. He texted a friend, reporting he saw flickers of light offshore and heard a low chanting. The next morning, searches found his tent deserted, footprints leading to the water's edge, but not returning. His phone lay on the sand, battery drained, containing an incomplete voice memo that ended in a static-laden moan. No body was recovered. An inquest concluded accidental drowning or succumbing to the riptide. But the talk in Westgrave insisted he was taken by the ghost crew, a new soul added to the doomed vessel's hold. The phenomenon's repetitive nature suggests some cyclical pattern. Usually, near midnight, the hush intensifies, then faintly audible calls or moans drift across the water. If the nights are stormy or the wind picks up, the effect is magnified by swirling gusts, an ephemeral choir of sorrow that can unnerve even seasoned sailors. On calmer nights with a high moon, watchers occasionally claim to see fleeting forms on the deck of the spectral vessel, pale shapes that might be arms raised in supplication or despair. The entire spectacle rarely lasts more than minutes. Then it vanishes as though the sea reclaims every trace. People often wake in the morning, uncertain if they experienced a shared hallucination or glimpsed something outside the realm of normal physics. The ghost ship's ephemeral visits remain the only constant, that it has manifested generation after generation, never offering closure. Why does it remain anchored to this specific coastline night after night, as local lore insists? Some hypothesize it's tethered to an anchor or chain lost beneath the waves, forcing its spirit to roam the same route. Others suggest a powerful curse initiated by wrongdoing, requiring the souls to remain in the waters of their betrayal. Alternatively, it might simply be that the black sands resonate with the negative energies of tragedy, forming a spiritual magnet for wandering spirits. No single explanation satisfies all. In either case, the synergy of darkness, hush, and those unsettling calls has woven an unbreakable tie between the region's identity and the specter of the ghost ship. For the fisherfolk of Westgrave, these nights are as normal as they are nerve-wracking. They pass down protective rituals from father to son, mother to daughter, like scattering salt at their thresholds or wearing shells harvested under a full moon. Some keep a single lantern lit in the window, believing it wards off the ghost crew's predatory gaze. Talk of a feeding by the spirits emerges now and then, especially after an unexplained drowning or disappearance. The concept is that the ghost ship requires new souls periodically to maintain its presence. Sensational, yes, but it underscores the deep-rooted anxiety. The villagers rarely speak openly about it to outsiders, mindful that the outside world sees them as superstitious. But among themselves, they accept the tradition that there's something bigger and older than rational logic at play. The Black Shore stands as a threshold, not just physically, where land meets sea, but spiritually, bridging life and unquiet death. Amid all this gloom, the region retains a fierce beauty. At sunrise, the same black sands turn to shimmering obsidian hues under the golden light. The sea's roar becomes welcoming, gulls returning in droves to feed. Tourists come and go, often unaware of the nighttime drama. The daytime fisherfolk, hauling nets of fish, do their job stoically. Younger generations occasionally question the old ghost ship yarns as marketing ploy or archaic legend. But then they grow older, perhaps have their own nocturnal brush with an inexplicable moan or swirling shape, and they realize the tradition is no mere tourism gimmick. Convinced, they adopt the same cautionary approach, continuing the cycle of hush around the phenomenon. One wonders if the ghost ship might eventually be laid to rest, if some grand exorcism or rite could break its hold. A few attempts at such ceremonies have been mentioned, but none took root in formal history. The problem is no single faction or official body fosters enough resources or resolve to attempt it. Also, a strange inertia pervades Westgrave, as though the community unconsciously depends on the mystique to define them. Local storytellers glean inspiration. Local crafts incorporate the ghost ship motif, and a subtle but real thread of unity arises from facing a shared enigma. Perhaps they fear losing that intangible piece of identity if the ghost ship vanished. Or maybe the haunting is less malevolent than it seems. Some older fisherfolk talk about a sense of empathy for the souls aboard, bound by sorrow to the watery horizon. They see it not purely as a threat, but a cautionary presence, reminding the living of the sea's power and the cost of seafaring arrogance or cruelty. So the nights continue, weaving a tapestry of echoes and faint silhouettes. Sometimes the hush passes with no incident, the sea calm, the watchers left disappointed if they had hoped for a fleeting glimpse. Other times, a swirl of wind stirs at midnight, carrying moans that rattle windows, sending families scurrying to close shutters. The phenomenon's unpredictability only deepens the local sense that it's beyond human scheduling, an integral piece of nature's darker side. Over the centuries, visitors have penned poems, songs, and painting depictions of the black sands at night, each trying to capture the intangible dread that seeps from the tide. A few artists end up spooked into leaving early, their creativity overshadowed by nightmares. Indeed, a rumor persists that some painters or poetically inclined minds, in an effort to depict the ghost ship, have found themselves too enthralled by its siren call and eventually disappeared. Overblown rumor or not, it contributes to the cautionary aura that envelops all attempts at direct confrontation with the phenomenon. To stand on those sands and behold the hush at dusk is to sense the ephemeral boundary between mortal existence and the deep unknown. Tides churn ceaselessly, wearing away footprints as if erasing evidence of any intrusion. The Black Shore, so called because of the dark basalt granules that form the beach, merges with the black water under the black sky. A triple darkness broken only by starlight or the scythe of the moon. In that setting, the mind is unmoored, and even the faintest suggestion, like a flicker on the horizon, transforms into a monstrous shape if one stares too long. Indeed, even if the ghost ship is merely an optical effect, the psychological impact is potent. The fisherman who invests belief in it truly experiences it, hearing calls that might be out-of-range illusions or echoes from memory. Then again, what if illusions can be vessels for an actual supernatural presence? Thus, eerie echoes by the Black Shore, ghost ship whispers that haunt coastal fisherfolk night after night, stands as more than a local ghost story. It embodies the deep synergy between nature's gloom and humanity's capacity for myth. The black sands have always exuded an uncanny quality, magnified by the restless waves. The nightly hush that descends around midnight fosters an environment for the mind to conjure or perceive phenomena outside normal boundaries. The repeated sightings, the recorded half-chorus of moans by would-be investigators, the disappearances, and the unwavering local testimonies converge into a cryptic pattern. Its message is both cautionary and humbling, that even in an age of rational science, corners of the earth remain where intangible dread lingers, defying neat explanation. Whether the ghost ship is a restless spirit, a bizarre atmospheric reflection, or some cosmic echo locked onto a tragedy centuries old, the effect on those living near the Black Shore is undeniable. A sense that each night, behind the gentle crash of waves, lies a murmur from beyond, an echo that might just be the voices of those long-lost mariners, trapped in a loop of watery wandering. Over time, new generations in Westgrave will be born, hear the stories, perhaps catch a glimpse of a silent mast cutting through moonlit mist, and pass the tradition on. And so the cycle stands. Watchers glean fleeting glimpses, skeptics rationalize, and the Black Shore stands unwavering, a stage for ghostly echoes that appear night after night, reminding us that some mysteries cannot be wholly dispelled by day's bright logic.